Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you might be in the world, dear viewer. It's a compact and bijou occasion this afternoon, stroke morning. Um, it is just the three of us, Craig, Bruce, and myself. And to that end, I've got sherry. Craig's got some wine, I think it was. And Bruce, what are you on, Bruce? Something probably
I got
quite.
nothing. As usual, I got nothing.
No, I've got nothing. I got nothing. We were just talking before we started that you have had yourself a visit from your Civil Aviation Authority. What on earth have you been doing, Bruce, to get them to come round?
Nothing actually. It's really good. This is the best part of our Civil Aviation Authority. They have safety. What are they? I've got his card here somewhere. He is the Aviation Safety Advisor. Okay, so these are the people that work informally in the aviation community, going around just keeping an eye on things, educating more than enforcing. And this guy, he's a really straight up guy. He came in and he comes in every 6 weeks, every 2 months. We have a chat, and I just run things by him, get the feedback, and it's really, these are the most valuable people in CAA because they are not the clipboard bureaucratic face of CAA. They're the real people. You know, these people are usually pilots, and they know about aviation. They know about the culture. And we had a good old chat, and it was really refreshing to see he gave me some insight to their enforcement policies and things, and it shows that in the field, these people are really practical, really pragmatic, and they're more interested in safety than rules, which is fantastic.
So you say they come there. So they're also keeping a listening watch on you if they come there every few weeks, or is it just the fact that you're at an airfield and they've got to come by there anyway?
Yeah, they basically travel around the whole country visiting airfields and dropping in and seeing what's going on. And because they don't announce they're coming, they're more likely to catch people doing silly things. And they'll just have a quiet word in their ear unless they reoffend, in which case I dare say they'll escalate it to an enforcement action. But yeah, it's the most valuable part of the whole thing. I think people in this capacity, really do make the whole industry and the whole hobby safer than the people who sit in their little offices and rattle their clipboards and pens.
Craig, you're an air trafficker of old, of your days of yore, things like that. Were there people that sort of did that in the air traffic world as well that might just pitch up and have a little quiet word in your shell, like?
I was a military air traffic controller, and most of what they referred to as assurance visits were planned. But there were some occasions when you would have non-notified visits from the assurance team, and that kind of keeps everyone on their toes. And I think it's a great culture to have, because if the problem with just culture is that people pay a lot of lip service to it, so you go through the motions, and because you work on the assumption that there is no oversight being provided by regulators on a day-to-day basis. So I could just get away with it. But it's nothing better than the prospect of a regulator arriving on your doorstep and go, right, okay, I'm here now. A bit like in the UK, what they refer to as an Ofsted visit. So Ofsted are the regulator for the education system, so the schools, and Ofsted visits arrive completely unannounced. They kind of shut the school down and have a look at all of the processes in real time. So there's nothing contrived about it. Nobody's putting on any extra measures because that's what they think the regulators or the inspection assurance team want to see. Personally, I think it's a great thing, and I think it's something that the RPAS world would benefit from. Unfortunately, I think in the UK at the moment we have 28 NQEs, national qualified entities. So these are training organisations approved by the Civil Aviation Authority, and I'm not overly confident with respect to the CA, given the amount of resources that they have. I don't think they've got the capacity. I don't think they just don't have the bandwidth to do no notice inspections. They probably do routine audits at a period, or what that period is, I don't know, but how often they're happening, I don't know. And unfortunately, it's the age-old problem with regulators: lack of resources, lack of people. So yeah,
I've forgotten now. Are you are you in the English? Are you in Wales or England now?
Well, so I'm in Wales right now, but I've just bought a house over the border in England. That is not in any way a a reflection on my nationality. I'm actually Welsh by background, so I just
No,
bought a house
I was just wondering
over the
if the Christmas lights at the background are not in fact Christmas lights, but they're lights in order to either A, keep the Welsh out, or B, keep the English out, whichever one. I can't remember which side.
neither.
Well, there's some sort of strange traditions you have over there already.
Yeah, no, it's neither. There's no border issues between Wales and England. I can tell you that.
Yeah. Well, really?
Yeah, absolutely. So no, these are just solar powered Christmas lights. We've had pretty much in the conservatory now for about 3 years. So
it's just Christmas all the time with you. So that's a fabulous thing. I've got a list of run through. I don't know where everyone is. It doesn't really matter. Dear viewer, add to the live chat if there's anything you'd like us to make stuff up about now. But in my little running order list, I put down. Well, the first thing I put down was, I don't know if people saw, if you saw the zip line thing, the 2,000 deliveries a day in Tanzania of medical supplies is what they're hoping to do, which I think is quite amazing. And especially when you consider in Rwanda, in the 10 months that they've been operating, they've done 1,400 flights total. So that's quite a ramp up in performance, but fair play to them. I said it would never work, and I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I've been following the Zipline project, and I've had a bit of interaction through some of the projects I've been doing as a consultant, and not in terms of contributing to the project, but I've interacted with some of their project managers to get some information about how they're going about doing what they're doing. I think 2,000 sorties a day is ambitious, and I've also got some questions over. Given the operating profile of the zipline concept, which is aircraft flying on a linear path from point A to point B, dropping an item, whether it's blood supplies or other medical paraphernalia, and then coming back from B to A at a known height, 2,000 flights a day. You know, I appreciate that Tanzania is a sparsely populated in terms of people country, but still there must be some real deconfliction challenges, because there will be aircraft operating in and around those 4 sites that they have nominated as the hubs for their delivery services. It's a real challenge. I mean, the turnaround, 500 sorties from each hub per day is a logistical challenge at the best of times. And I've monitored operational military UAS tasking in places like Afghanistan, where they couldn't even hope to achieve that sort of tasking numbers. I appreciate it's a commercial operation and they're operating in conjunction with the Tanzanian government, but still, it's a big challenge. And if kudos to them if they can achieve it. But they seem to have they're completely on board with the Tanzanian government. So hopefully that will overcome some of the challenges that that will be presented. I don't know what you think, Bruce, about that project.
Haven't really followed it actually, so I can't give it any informed comment.
We're getting super feedback. I don't know where we're getting it from. Is it from you? Is it from you, Craig? Is it you?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I've got.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
I don't know, but yeah, it's a twin-engined thing, Bruce, and it basically parachutes in the supply. So it is only one-way delivery. You don't get the opportunity to load something up and send it back again, which I think is. I thought that was one of the sticking point. Here's James Boyd from Above and Beyond, I believe. Good day, James.
Gary, how are you? We finally caught up with each other.
We finally caught up, and I believe you are from the I forgot what to call it, the Space Coast or something like that, aren't you?
Florida Space Coast, Kennedy, Cape Canaveral. Yep.
Florida Space Coast. Well, welcome to you. We were just talking about Zipline and their whether they really can get 2,000 deliveries a day out in Tanzania. It seems like a very, very huge number from four locations. Just a very huge number, actually. But
well, what I understood was they were going to have the villagers themselves. They were going to be training them and creating more stations, weren't they?
They might very well be in the end. all I can think of when it's sort of the various bits of Africa I've been in is that the hubs surely will have to be in very major places. So there wouldn't be the opportunity to have a hub 100 kilometers away,
Right.
because the truck would never get there. Wouldn't have there'd be no truck there. But it'd be very interesting. Fair play to them if they get that going. And one thing is they are well ahead of any European or American operator or Australian operator that's even considering it. If they get if they get 100 flights a day out, they'll their operational experience is light years ahead of anybody else at the moment. But I know in New Zealand, your guys Robin up there wants to have a similar delivery sort of thing for medicine up around her test site there. I don't know if she's contacted those guys, but I've heard that the zipline guys, just the whole world wants to speak to them, and they're super busy, is what I've heard. They really don't have they don't have the bandwidth to do anything else really. So fair play to them. So let's knock that one on the head and go to a contentious one, the DJI bug bounty. Bruce, you must have read that, and you must have some thoughts on that bug bounty. Let's start with you first, Bruce.
Yeah, it's important when you're trying to debug stuff to get or solicit information from your users, because they're the people who are using the system far more than the developers. So that Microsoft run one, and virtually all the major software manufacturers run bug bounties. So I'm surprised it's taken DJI so long to get on board with that. It's a very cheap way to dramatically improve the security of your system. And of course, and the current situation where DJI is facing a lot of scrutiny from a lot of like the US government and all sorts of other agencies, they need to be seen to be stepping up to the plate very quickly and going the extra mile to try and convince these people that, hey, you can use our product because we're safe, we're secure. So this is a good way to do it.
You don't think it's a bit cynical, and you don't think it's just to make sure that the super top hackers go out for the money first rather than reveal it? Or do you think there'll be enough of those guys left to reveal any issues?
Well, the thing is, it's not like hacking a e-commerce site or a bank. What are you actually going to get? The average hacker, the little guy stuck away in his parents' bedroom, 40-year-old guy in his parents' bedroom, working away on his little computer. What benefits he going to get from hacking someone's DJI app? Like there's no financial benefit to it. And it's not the sort of thing you can really brag about. It's not like hacking NASA's computers. So I think it's a fairly small target. And the only real people interested in hacking may be state actors who want to do something disruptive or are looking to collect a lot of data. But even that kind of hack's probably going to be picked up pretty quickly. It probably is a little bit symbolic because there hasn't been a lot apart from the stuff that DJI have built in themselves with, using third-party libraries. They are their own biggest enemy in that respect. And so I don't know they're actually going to get many bugs reported. But the whole thing with security, the whole mantra for anyone who's involved in security is trust nobody. That's it, basically. Yeah. And for that purpose, I have the necessary safety equipment.
Very good. Very good, yes. And how long until you're done in the oven? 200C? Or about 4 hours, like that, is it?
I'll have to check this thermometer, but it'll be a bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and who wants to base a turkey? But anyway, moving on very swiftly. So anyone else, I don't know, any other opinions on the bounty?
Well, you're not going to see Kevin joining them, are you?
No.
According to his, yeah.
No. Kevin's not gonna join in, and well, I mean, I think in some ways he is helping him a lot. He's revealed a lot of the stuff they've needed to address, and they've just done that, which is great. And it needs people to hold their feet to the fire. Really, people need to, not come for the reward, but say, hey, that's not right. And I think it has done their brand quite a bit of damage.
It has. They said to me on Twitter just the other day on my account, they wrote back, well, how can we help you? And I said, starting with the local data only, and then when we prove that to be true, because I'm using all open source software now, and I don't connect to them at all.
What's interesting is that the new offline mode, from what I hear, is going to really restrict. And not restrict people to anything less than they shouldn't be doing anyway legally, proper visual line of sight and low level and all that stuff. The sort of flight restrictions that should apply anyway. And that's what that local data version apparently is going to do. It's going to sort of allow you only to fly 100 and a bit meters and only 100 and bit meters high. And I think there's going to be a huge backlash to that. So then you know, what do you choose? Do you choose to share your data, knowingly share your data even more and open it all up, or face the restrictions? It'd be very interesting when that local data thing rolls out finally. And then do we really trust it? Is it really local data only?
That's the point. Can we trust them? And to quote them now, at this point, they're only taking your data when you send your aircraft in for service, when you sync your flight logs, and when you use your video or photos for SkyPixel. That's when they acquire your data on their servers per them. But, you know, we've proven through what was that, Spy-Lou or whoever Kevin outed?
Yeah, that's a fabulous email address to have, isn't it? Really?
No hiding that.
No, if that is in fact the case, and what, you know, I mean, that could easily be a joke email address, couldn't it? I mean, I would do it if I was the bloke right now. I would go, you don't want your details going to this at whatever.com, you know, as my email address or something, you know. So yeah, well, let's see what happens. And it's interesting that so the bounty was announced, as well as the announce of removing the various bits of other software that third parties put on there. Honest, my lord, honest. It was others, nothing to do with us, and that's all happened on the day that Unique have launched their new machine, the what is
520?
it? 520. That's it. And Gene had some experience with that, and Gene was going to come on and talk some more about his experience with that machine. He's flown it. He loves the
it's limited.
The nighttime.
That 520, it has that EO camera, but that's only 160 as far as the FLIR goes.
But apparently, Gene reckons it's the best one in its class he's ever flown. So yes, it's quotes limited compared to FLIR, but he reckons it's the best one out there. He was going to talk about it, but of course he's just a touch busy at the moment with a little bit of water that's occurred in his hometown and area, and he's also been inundated with people volunteering to come and help. And I think, you know, if anyone, dear viewer, well, hopefully you're not there now, but you're or not rushing off there, but don't rush off there without getting in touch with the right people. Just don't get in the way. It's just not worth the hassle. I don't know. Am I speaking out of turn? I don't think it's worth going down there trying to be a hero.
Not at all. There's plenty of people out there now.
And I think there's plenty of people that are talking to the emergency services in the correct way and are known and have had the training and have been plugged into it. It's no good just rushing off to respond. Rather, if you be oh God, I'm really having a good rant now, aren't I? But rather go with your local search and rescue team and join them and be part of them, learn their systems and procedures and be ready for something in your own local area, rather than pitch up and try and be a hero. I think. I don't know, Craig, you're a military controller. What's your sort of view on that?
Yeah, I would kind of agree with the views here, is that as well-intentioned as people might be wanting to go and offer their services, they often unintentionally provide a hindrance to the combined coordinated emergency services, because, you know, there's a lot of activity, a lot of air activity going on there. I've worked in Afghanistan where, you know, there are everything within the airspace at the time is operational, it's controlled, it's understood, it's military, they're all speaking to each other. You start to introduce an unknown quantity into that environment and things start to get very complex, and they're already complex. So to manage their expectations in that respect, you know, it's good. It's great that they want to offer their services, but they just have to manage their expectations, because actually they could be presenting more of an issue than is currently already in place. So yeah.
And it's a fact that there's only one communication system, and these volunteers coming into the state won't be on that truncated 800 system.
Yeah.
So they'll be flying on their own anyway.
Hmm. Yeah, so they might not be serving the actual need of the time. They're going off the perceived one, and then you're right. It's all about communications and how these things run. So I think the best thing, and the best thing is to get plugged in before an emergency. Get plugged into your local thing and understand the system, and then heaven forbid there is an emergency wherever you live, at least you are prepared for it. Anyway, that's a rant hat off. I need a hat with an R on, don't I? But it does. It brings. I wanted to talk. I wanted to get you on, Craig, because you wrote for us about operational safety cases, or you wrote for yourself for drones, which sounds all very grown up and actually, quite frankly, very, very dull. Why should I care? Surely I can just pitch up and fly, liken this a rescue situation, and what does that matter?
Well, it's immensely dull. I can't defend that. But the reason I wrote the article, and it's the first of a series of articles where I'm going to focus on developing safety cases for smaller manned aircraft, is because that's kind of the next step for permission holders in the UK. And I'm guessing across, all of the countries that operate smaller manned aircraft, so globally. In the UK, generally, I mean, at the moment in the UK, there are 3,200 registered operators. So that's organizations that have a manned aircraft. So there's probably somewhere in the region of about 5,000 to 6,000 qualified remote pilots who are active. The vast majority of those hold standard permissions, which are they don't have any exemptions. So there's no reductions to those limitations. They're probably somewhere in the region of about 50 or 60 of those permissions have what are called exemptions to operate in congested areas. So they have submitted a safety case which has outlined a coherent safety argument underlined by a body of evidence. Now, as a consultant in the industry, clearly I have a vested interest in this because I'm offering a service, but what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to educate, I'm trying to raise the basic awareness, the baseline level of awareness for safety in the UK, because I'm afraid to say that the vast majority of those permission holders in the UK, excuse me, most of them kind of pay lip service. I say most of them, many of them, it's probably a better way to describe it, pay lip service to the idea of safety. They have a paragraph in their ops manual which references safety, but actually safety is a bit of a peripheral activity. It's not at the very core of what they do. And this is what I'm trying to change in the UK, because we're running towards a safety cliff at the moment, and it's quite simply down to luck that something dramatic hasn't happened in the UK. And I'm guessing through pretty much every country that's operating smaller manned aircraft and are experiencing the same conditions. At some stage, given the situation that we're in, there's going to be a major event. And that major event is going to have implications for all of the operators out there. So really what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to basically educate people to take a bit more of a focus, to understand a bit more about what their safety culture is in their organization. Personally, I think that there needs to be more of a focus on safety, and people need to start competing on safety rather than just purely on price. And that's quite a difficult thing to achieve, because in the UK, the vast majority of operators are essentially 2 or 3 man organizations with 2 or 3 drones. They're living hand to mouth existences. They're taking as many jobs as they can get on because, the revenue stream just isn't there. They're not likely to scale up. They reach kind of a glass ceiling. So for them, safety is unfortunately a bit further down the priority list. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to shift that perception.
But what do you mean by safety then? I mean, just I always wear my lucky underpants, or what does that mean?
Well, if you look at parallels within the manned aviation community, in the last 30 years, safety has improved dramatically through the application of what's called safety management systems. Now, safety management system is an active and dynamic program within an organization which manages safety, which is to say that they look at it routinely as a matter of course. So it isn't a peripheral activity that they review every 6 months. It's at the very core of everything that they do. And that is kind of the that's counterintuitive to the current culture for drone operators in the UK. What they see safety as is something that they have to allude to. So, for instance, when they conduct risk assessments, which I think most people generally accept as being a key part of a manned aircraft operation, the problem with risk assessments is that people just kind of do them. They feel that they have to do them. But at the end of the risk assessment process, nothing's really acted on. It's not the information that has come about because of the risk assessment process. It isn't really absorbed or acted on or mitigated. It's kind of done just as a, well, it's something that I have to do in case I get audited.
So, what do you mean? You might have a bit of paper that says, I've got to have a cordon of this radius. Yeah, tick, got that. I've got to spoken to air traffic. Tick, yeah, got that. Done this, done this, done that. And because the picture would look the same for the next job, the next job, the next job. It's just, oh yeah, when I get to this form, I go tick, 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 tick here, and I don't actually think about what I'm doing.
Yeah, but it's basically going through the motions, because ultimately safety, in terms of the actual function of safety is not revenue generating. And unmanned aircraft operators out there, they're all about, particularly the guys, you know, at the bottom level who are living day to day, not much resources. They're basically trying to live in a way that generates revenue, because it pays their bills. It puts their kids through school and college, puts food on the table, that sort of thing. And
so it's a little bit like where you get the sorry, Craig, the dangerous attitudes in aviation, the human factors sort of a thing. So because you are living hand to mouth, I'm sorry if I'm jumping around here, but you might do one job where you cut some corners, and then you get away with it. On that job, you got away with it, and then the next time it becomes that little bit easier. To RCI, is this a hobby or commercial multi-rotor channel? Is this a multi-rotor channel? I don't know. We'll have a poll in a minute. It's a hobby, commercial, whatever you want it to be. Just ask questions, RCI. It's whatever you want it to be. Yeah, so I was saying, yes, so you cut corners, so then you think you can get away with it next time, and that erodes the whole safety sort of case or your way of thinking and stuff like that. I didn't put that very well. Back to you, Craig.
Yeah, but essentially, yes. So a safety management system is an active and dynamic way of managing that day to day. And the only real way to do it is to embed a culture of safety within the organization. And that's quite a tricky thing to do, because cultures are the sort of things that just can't be forced upon an organization. They can't be instilled overnight either. They take time to embed. And the reason that safety has improved in the manned aviation industry over the last 20 years is because there has been a sustained effort by organizations such as ICAO and EASA to do that. And so in the air traffic environment now, there's an embedded just culture within there, which doesn't penalize people for reporting issues that they have had, as long as they don't do things negligently or willfully. And that's the sort of thing that I think the unmanned aircraft sector generally across, globally, starts to need to embrace. And when they start to do that, they're going to hopefully move forward, because as the technology advances, there is still a requirement for us as humans to understand things like human factors. And until such time as autonomy completely takes over the human component in the operation, we as humans are still going to fail. And human factors is one thing that the unmanned aircraft sector at the moment doesn't understand very well, because they're so concerned with the commercial drive, the excitement of the industry and new products coming on the scene, and all this discussion over privacy and other associated elements, that the whole idea of human factors has sort of gone by the wayside. And I've done some human factors workshops recently where it's been evident to me that drone operators are completely unaware of them until you point them out and you start talking about some of the issues which apply. I mean, they're all obvious, and they're generally accepted principles in the manned aviation sector. And human factors training is spread throughout the airline industry, the air traffic control industry, and is proven to be helpful. Now, I'm not suggesting that that's going to change overnight in the drone industry, because frankly, the majority of drone operators are not going to shell out for human factors training, because they just don't have the resources or the budget to do it.
I was made as I have admit that I admit I have had human factors training, and I had to shell out for that human factors training, and I resented it. I resented having to shell
Was it
out.
beneficial?
Yeah, no, that's where I'm going. It exactly was.
Right.
I resented to start with paying the money, and I
Yeah.
thought, oh, I'm gonna waste the time. I had to drive best part of 1,000 kilometers to go and do this,
Yeah.
and then afterwards, I came away thinking, "Oh God, this is something I should have studied." And I, I've just while we've been talking, I've been using because Bruce has given me the appropriate training on the render farm, and a lot of human factors is this triangle, which you might remember the name of, Craig. But it's basically about if you cut out the little incidents which are down at the bottom, you don't get up here, you don't get up here, you don't get up to the big accident at the top. And there's a triangle, and it's stuff like that, and it's obvious. And the key thing that sort of I came away with from it from my training was it actually would save my business, my manned aviation business at the time, some money by thinking about safety. I just was going to a course that I didn't want to be at. um, but it was good. And what's RC? Do you think that FAA being showed slow to break laws to enforce them, or rather attempt to enforce mandatory registration when they don't have the authority? We'll talk about registration in a minute, RC. I hear you there, and XJet is replying. But yeah, so yeah, I enjoyed it, and you don't think it's in the drone industry at the moment, Craig?
No, it's because it's not mandated. It isn't mandatory, as far as I'm aware. It certainly isn't in the UK, and I don't think it is in the US either. So it's not likely to be in for a while, I think, while the industry is trying to sort of stabilise. I do think it will be beneficial, and I certainly think it'll be useful for the sort of embedding a better safety culture. And by the way, that pyramid, there is actually a better way of describing that. It's the James Reason Swiss cheese model.
Oh, okay, yeah. Let's go for cheese. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds very dramatic, but it's not as exciting as you think. But basically, it's if you imagine slices of cheese with holes in, and they're moving about, and then there's a light that shines through those holes, and eventually on the right hand side you get to the extreme action. So in most cases, some form of accident. The idea is the more slices of cheese you've got and the smaller the holes, the less likelihood is that shaft of light will actually get to the accident. So the analogy is basically designed to demonstrate that the more controls you have in place in terms of your safety management system, the less likelihood you have of some form of accident occurring.
Well, that model obviously is too advanced for me to use in my render farm, and we'll let Bruce do the Swiss cheese rendering because obviously he's the main man with it. I saw you nodding your head a lot there, Bruce. Are you know about these safety management systems and things like this?
Yeah. Craig brings up some really good stuff, and as he says, safety is not about checklists and things. It's about culture. It's a culture of safety, and it's a mindset. If you have a state of mind which is pro safety, then a lot of the stuff just comes naturally. And I'm looking at for safety from the point of view not so much in industry, a certificate of achievement. My goodness, I'm looking at it not so much from a industry point of view, but also from the recreational point of view, because I think this big disaster that Craig's alluding to that will sort of change the whole thing forever, it's probably going to come from recreational operators. These people that go out there with their drones and do stupid things near airports. And my philosophy on that is, I was talking to the guy from CAA last week, and I said that what the problem CAA has at the moment with recreational drone operators is that it's not the same as the pilot community. Now, the pilot community, the GA community, tend to be disciplined and organised and respectful of regulators. They do that because this has been trained into them. People flying their Phantom 4 at the end of a runway, they are probably more likely to be the kind of person, if you say, don't do that, that's exactly what they'll go and do, because they're rebellious, they're young, they haven't embraced the psychology of this group of people who are basically operating outside of the regulatory framework. And so they think, I will make a rule, that'll solve the problem. It doesn't. They're not dealing with these people. I've taken my own initiative in this area, and I think, Gary, you saw the video where I walked through a park and flew my drone and things. And all the way through, I use that as a safety exercise to try and explain to the group of people who may not listen to regulators, and try and instill in them not so much this is a rule, but this is what I do to be safe, and demonstrate firsthand what I'm doing to be safe, and show that despite having a pro-safety mindset, I can have a hell of a lot of fun while remaining safe, not necessarily remaining within the regulatory framework, but remaining safe, because rules and safety are two different things. Often rules are designed to promote safety, but they don't guarantee it. The only thing that will guarantee safety is having the right attitude and having a culture of safety, as part of your operating procedure. So I'm trying to get at it from the point of view of, make these people see that you can have a lot of fun without getting into trouble, rather than just throwing rules at them and throwing threats of enforcement and things at them. And I think it's working. I've had a lot of positive feedback on that video. I intend to do a lot more of that. The interesting thing is that I didn't get paid a bean for this. CAA, the people with their little clipboards and their rules, they sit in an office with free coffee, donuts, and biscuits. They get all the money. I sit here doing, all the work, and I get nothing. But I'm not complaining about it. It's just that CAA has to wake up and realize that they've got an army of people out there who could be working for them, as long as they deal with them properly. But there's a big disconnect between the regulators and the people they're trying to regulate. I'm trying to bridge it, but I'm not getting a lot of help from the regulators themselves. I wish that would change, because you can carrot versus stick.
Well, what would you say to the regulators then, Craig? How could the regulators help? Because they've got their books, haven't they? They've got to do what they've got to do.
Yeah, I mean, Bruce makes a great point about recreational consumer drone pilots. They are probably the biggest risk in the UK as well, and the issue is that the UK Civil Aviation Authority have suddenly found themselves with an unprecedented challenge that they've never experienced before, which is that commoditized drone products like DJI and Unique have now enabled a route to the aviation community that to becoming an aviator that was never present before. And all of a sudden, rather than a manned aviation community of, say, I don't know, 150,000 people in total in the UK, all of a sudden 1 million people have now got access to aircraft that can fly in the national airspace. And what would I say to them? Well, I regularly speak with the UK Civil Aviation Authority, and they've got a real challenge on their hands, because the recreational consumer drone sector in the UK is a difficult challenge. Recently, the UK announced intentions to make registration mandatory for drones in the United Kingdom, to follow the example of the FAA and the Irish Aviation Authority. And I think that's the right move, because it's whilst it's not going to get everyone, in the same way that not everyone registers their cars in the UK, what it will do is it starts to redress the problem. It's not the silver bullet, it isn't by any means, but what it does is it gives you a conduit to provide education, to provide information to consumer drone operators. Whereas at the moment, I mean, at the moment there is no conduit. You can buy these platforms off the shelves of well-known electrical retailers in the UK, and some of them may have leaflets in there to say, stop before you operate this, there are regulations you need to comply with, but some of them aren't. And you can buy them off the internet, and there's no information on there at all, and it's only through forums online, or sometimes as much as somebody coming up to them in the park while they're flying for the first time and saying, hey, are you aware that there are some safety regulations you need to comply with?
We said it last week, didn't we? There's a big jump from the traditional model aircraft world, where you built something, and especially when you're an old duffer like me, and especially Bruce, but when you built like a balsa and tissue thing, and you spent hours and hours and hours building it, and then you destroy it, you take it out and try and fly it and destroy it. So then you'd go to a club, and then you meet some other old duffers who would mutter and tut at you and give you a hard time, but actually teach you on the way. That doesn't happen when you go to a big box store and you can buy something you couldn't 20 years ago. You couldn't go to a big box store and buy a model aeroplane that would fly 5 kilometers with an HD video link, and you could take your hands off, press a button, and then come home. It's just a completely different animal to traditional modeling. RCI's mentioning there's no reason to regulate hobby aircraft, commercial, yes. And I sort of agree with you, because if somebody is in the hobby world, they might well be in that framework, and that's where they're getting their safety training, is with those old duffers in the field that are tutting and moaning at you with whatever you've bought to fly, but actually they're kind of training you, and they're bringing you on, and and you learn your culture through watching an old bloke yelling at you saying, don't flip your prop. Well, go on, Bruce, you represent that, right?
I think regulators have to understand that everybody works on a value exchange basis. When we buy and sell stuff, we give someone money, they give us something in return. Everything is value exchange, whether you're a regulator or a vendor or whatever. And if regulators want to impose registration, they're going to provide some value for that, because they're asking for something. You've got to provide something in return. Now, Craig mentions about a conduit for education. That's not working. I mean, I look here in New Zealand. I put a video up explaining our rules. It got 18,000 views. CIA put a video up explaining their rules. It got 4,000 views. I offer more than just do this, whatever. I offer people value because I inform them. I tell them what's right, what's wrong, what's crap, what's good. I offer them some value. So they watch my videos, and I'm able to use that as a method for educating and informing. The regulators, if they just come in and think, right, we will just we'll demand, but we won't give, it's not going to work. If regulators want to get control of this hobby, the problem sector, which is basically hobbyists, unskilled, untrained, and a little bit uncontrollable, they've got to connect with that community. You're not going to do it by forcing regulation down their throat. You've got to go out there and say, how can we connect with these people? How can we offer them something that will encourage them to comply and perhaps, whatever. So I think the regulators need to work more closely with people like myself, people like Gary, the people who already have a connection with that community. But the problem is regulators put themselves, certainly in this country, in an ivory tower, well away from everybody, and they just sit there, eat their donuts, drink their coffee, and tell us what to do. They don't ask us, what should we be doing? The consultation is so minimal, and that's the problem.
Bruce, the thing is, for instance, in Europe, we have until the beginning of September, the 5th or the 9th, the comments open for the notice of amendment of the drone rules, and they're large. They're 2 big documents that have to be commented, and it's going to affect us regardless of national regulations. And one of the documents, both documents are around 100 and something pages. We have to read them carefully, and they're open to submissions of criticisms to those rules. So we can keep on moaning at our forums, at our podcasts, videocats, whatever, but these guys are waiting for comments, and if we don't do these comments to them, the guys that are doing the comments are guys that are playing on their self-interest. As you guys know, I have both hats. I'm a model airplane user for 40-something years, and I also work professionally with drones. And I can see both hats, and I can see where things collide, both worlds collide. And I'm submitting 2 different points of view, one on the name of my company and one on my personal name. So get the word out, get the comments to EASA, to the notice of amendments. We have to do it. Otherwise, we'll get I don't want to say the bad words. We'll get prejudiced with very badly. So we have to do it, Bruce. You have a word on that, because when you moan and complain about regulations in New Zealand, everybody hears you. You get support of people all over the world. So get the word out. Get the people on the notice of amendments. Get people complaining, because these rules are EASA, so European rules. They go to Portugal, they go to UK, and I'm sure that you guys in New Zealand, Australia, and South Africa will get them too, because it will end up being a worldwide best practice. If we don't act now, it's going to be complicated.
Yeah, you're right. One thing I've noticed though is that there's a consultative process. So that they make up these rules, they put them out for consultation, people make submissions, and then that's it. There's no dialogue. It's just here's what we're offering, there's what you say, right, this is the result. There's no ongoing dialogue because you can't. I've often put submissions in on things, and my submission has been dismissed. Submission is dismissed. Well, hang on a minute. Why aren't you telling me why it was dismissed? And I might have a response to your response to my thing. There needs to be a dialogue, a conversation. That's what's missing. We've got these very formal processes, but there's just a lack of ongoing engagement between the two communities, and I think it needs to be more. Otherwise, people feel resentful that I put a submission in, it was a good submission, and it was dismissed out of hand. I wanted to have
it's all a matter of compromise. I want a clear skies policy, and they don't want a clear skies policy. So where do we compromise? So we have to compromise something. Some compromises are stupid. On my point of view, on their point of view, they have different information that we have, and they might say, no, it's not stupid. So let's try to reach a compromise, and that's the main thing. And I'm pointing at you here. I'm pointing at you to please get the notice out of people going to submit their complaints on the EASA proposals.
That's the EASA one. Yeah, we ran that this week. I'm not clever enough to quickly find a link for that. RCI on the comments. You can have your $5 back. But if you look, there's a video from this drone stuff this week I can't remember, about a month ago or so. We spoke with the man himself who did that, and you'll actually end up giving more data to the FAA. If you want your $5 back, you'll end up giving them more data than when you signed up for your $5. So it's woohoo! Well done, then. Top job.
Come on, Garrett. They have to know to who they're sending the money back. I cannot. We both cannot go there and say, "Hey, I want $5." Otherwise, they'll be broke.
Can't we? Oh, can't we form an orderly queue? But yeah, no, but there's more data, so it's not actually worth getting that $5 back, and it was illegal, and other things are going to come. James, you held up a safety, so I wanted to go. James, you tell us about your safety certificate, and then Craig, you've actually been in Parliament, so we go with James's safety certificate first because he bothered showing it, and then I hear about what your thoughts on that, and then we'll go to Craig about being in Parliament and talking to grown-ups. So, James, what was that certificate you briefly flashed up there?
Well, I just wanted to say that I think the FAA is getting a bad rap because they did introduce aeronautical decision-making as part of their PAVE and risk process. And they claim that it has stopped human error up to like 50% improvement. And this specific one is the FAA safety team for Part 107 Small Unmanned Certificate online course. They have an online safety course that you can also take. So the FAA is doing their part, but they are very quiet. And to your side of it, I am mad about the DAC committee because it doesn't involve anybody. I don't have a 3DR shirt on or a Pixar. The guys who are out here flying $5,000 aircraft care and are taking risk management. So are we talking about the 700,000 people who own $100 aircraft? Where's the line?
Yeah, no, you're right. As soon as you start flying expensive cameras and your investment in the flying platform goes up, then perhaps your consideration of safety goes up, and perhaps there is a tipping point. And all of this, and I'm glad you mentioned the DAC. It'll give me a few seconds to rant about the DAC. All of this is not actually being driven by safety. It's being driven by people that sort of want to now own the airspace. They want to privatize airspace throughout the world. in order to take a little bit of a tiny micro payment. They'll scream and shout and they'll say that's not what it's for. It's all about safety. Rubbish. For an air trafficker is not going to want to have suddenly, I don't know, on the edge of a big city in America, he's not going to have on a nice day 300 extra contacts pop up for 6 or 7 minutes at a time, or 20 minutes at the most. It's not, well, I don't know, Craig, I could be talking out of turn, but it'll be data that's not needed. And I also think technology is evolving to a point where none of it will be needed. In 5 years' time, platforms will get out of the way of manned aircraft. They won't get out of the way of manned aircraft because that's what it's been designed for. They'll get out of the way of manned aircraft and they can detect them well, because the real job that they do 9 to 5 is inspecting buildings, inspecting stuff, and they don't want to hit that stuff. And a byproduct of that inspection ability will be, oh yeah, there's an airplane, I better avoid that then. And that will be purely be a byproduct, and that'll be within 5 years. I'm going to stop. I'm stopping ranting. I'm stopping ranting. I'm going to let Craig rant. Can you? Over to you, Craig.
So from my position as an ex air traffic controller, I can say that, and I've had a bit of interaction with software developers for UTM solutions. And when I was chatting to those providers, those organizations, it became clear to me that those that weren't from an ex-air traffic control background had very little understanding of what they were actually suggesting, which is, yes, we're going to provide this all-encompassing common operating picture which air traffic controllers will be able to see and they'll be able to show on their screen. And you've quite rightly just highlighted the fact that, you know, air traffic control in its purest sense is a difficult discipline. Even with the advent of, you know, greater technology, there's still a lot of mental calculation and processing, planning, multitasking, the division of attention, those sort of things. And you know, in most cases, you've got anywhere in the region of 30 to 40 radar returns or blips. So primary radar, and you've got secondary radar information displayed. You start introducing 100 new information sources on a screen, and suddenly that becomes saturated to the point at which the air traffic controller's ability to assimilate that information and do something with it diminishes, such that they can't actually operate.
Yeah, it's the law of diminishing returns. Exactly.
Yeah. And it's quite precipitous as well. You know, I've been in situations as an air traffic controller where I'm operating at peak flow. You know, I can, you know, everything's working fine, and then I get 1 or 2 more tracks, and then all of a sudden your capacity starts to go down. You get 1 or 2 more, and it tips you over the edge. It's the straw that breaks the camel's back. And when you look at UTM, particularly at the question of integrating UTM pictures into an existing air traffic control picture, you're talking about a level of magnitude that's in the region of 5 to 10 times as many tracks as an air traffic controller is routinely used to. So that in itself presents a massive challenge. Now, I appreciate that there is going to be increasing levels of autonomy, both in air traffic control and also in the UTM space. And I hope that they match the pace of this potential challenge as it comes in, because otherwise there's going to be a real problem, personally. Yeah.
No, I agree.
Becomes part of the Peter print. I mean, how far do you really want to, as Gary was saying, actually, Craig, you were saying it, if you've got 20,000 of these aircraft going up for 5 or 10 minutes and coming back down, you're going to overload an air traffic controller for that nonsense?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a great question, because how do you know, surely you would want to be able to make some form of distinction between traffic that is actually an issue and traffic that is just simply just popped up. It's got an ADS-B trace on there, which is important because it identifies the aircraft, but, you know, is it a factor for your traffic? Because it might be operating at 500 feet AGL. In which case you've got radar traffic in the pattern going into a particular airport at 2,500 feet. Is it a confliction? Probably, no, it may not be. And so you've got to filter out the white noise, and that's where the trick's going to come down. It's going to come down to very clever algorithms, because it'll be the white noise that kills you.
It's basically killing traffic below 500 feet on non-control areas, right?
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah, essentially you can place filters in there which are determined by either lateral or vertical distances.
Yeah.
Or speeds, for instance. So the aircraft might just pop up in a particular area that's not moving. It's not moving laterally in any great direction. It's just literally going up in one space up to a certain height, and the radar may not even, it can recognize it's there, but it may not necessarily display it because it doesn't determine it to be a factor of confliction for any air traffic that the controller is actually controlling at that time.
So we are a few years far from having a smart system that can do that management all by itself.
We are we're a few years away from that, but I know there's some work going on it to make all this common operating picture, to integrate it in a way that works for air traffic controllers. I'm just not really sure how many years we are away from that.
Yeah, because we still haven't managed to do automated real aircraft traffic control in an automated way. So and we have very much less, and I'm safer using the guys in the tower than using the crazy computer running MS-DOS 3.3.
Yeah, and it's just, but isn't it just beginning to roll out in the UK, where you're going to get circular or semicircular approaches instead of piling everything down the ILS, they're going to put everything in a big curve. I think I've been reading about that and stuff like that. But all of this is just coming on, like, especially I hark on about ADS-B, but ADS-B was designed in the 90s. They started in the 90s. We're talking about 30-year-old technology. It's being thought about to integrate into a modern thing now. Go on, Louis.
Have you ever heard, if it runs, don't touch it?
Yes.
If it ain't broken, don't fix it.
Don't fix it. Yeah. No. Well,
that's why we all watch black and white television, isn't it?
Yeah. It works.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh, definitely. Yeah. Is there any other sort of television?
No. And yet they're requiring that by 2020.
And isn't this traffic management? If we look at just traffic, the word is very interesting. We have vehicles driving all over the world without much in the way of traffic management. In cities, we need traffic management, as we would do in certain parts of the airspace, but largely we have people driving around without any form of traffic management other than some basic rules. But why can't we apply this to unmanned aviation? We have highways that go in one direction only, on that freeways, motorways, whatever. So can we not stratify the airspace similarly, so that if you're traveling in one direction, you're at a certain altitude. If you travel in another direction, you're at another altitude, perhaps below 200 feet. It's a bit of a free-for-all where recreational hobbyists can use it, but if you're looking commercially, you're going to have that, 300 to 350 will be for unmanned aircraft moving in this direction, whatever. So we can minimize the potential for collision and problems if we do that. And then around an airport, of course, you want massive traffic management. But outside of those congested areas, what's wrong with some simple stratification, as we have now, where unmanned aircraft is supposed to be below 400 and manned aircraft above 500? Are we overthinking the problem? I mean, we don't have traffic lights everywhere, all on entire road system. We don't have all that sort of stuff. We can trust people to operate reasonably. There's a risk, but we consider that the risk is outweighed by the convenience. And we can also have systems. Cars now have, collision radar and things, so you can't run up the back of somebody. These systems will come into place. Is traffic management really the big problem that it's being perceived to be, or are we just overthinking it?
I think it's being overthought by a load of I'll say Silicon Valley engineers, for the want of a better term, but there are engineers all around the world. There are Silicon Valleys available all around the world. Pick your particular one. And they've seen what they perceive to be a problem and are creating software solutions, this is my opinion, for a problem that doesn't really exist. And if your RPA is big enough that it need or is of a size it needs to fly a distance, and it can comply with there is a aviation systems, a quadrantal rule, a semicircular rule. There are rules for heights, and you could just add in another one. It's 500 feet or 1,000 feet depending on separation, which way you're going, which way, whatever. Well, let's just make it 200. The 250-foot levels is where the drones live, going up and down the system. There are simple adjustments that could be made. Here in South Africa, I've been thinking through it, and we've got an ADSB receiving thing, and they'll want everybody to have ADSB. There are only 4,000. We're a bit of a weird case. It wouldn't be the same in America, but there are only 4,000 light aircraft here. So it probably would be cheaper for the unmanned aircraft industry, which allegedly is going to be enormous, like it is everywhere else in the world.
Yeah.
The unmanned aircraft industry should pay to equip all the manned aircraft with ADSB, and we'll have some other nice new system. We'll make some nice, better, future-proof system for identifying our aircraft and getting them into this UTM system rather than relying on dear old ADSB.
Are the ones pushing the technology the ones who are making the software and the ones who are going to make the money off it?
You can't say things like that. How very dare you? How very dare you say things like that?
Come on. We are killing all the IPOs that are going to happen around this technology.
Don't shoot.
Yeah, no, you're Bob and right. That is the trouble. People are trying to recover for ADSB. They're trying to, in America, to recover their investment in all the ground stations, which they've put their 200 ground stations out there and spent millions of dollars on it. And now people with a Raspberry Pi and an SDR stick can do the same thing for $60. Now hundreds of them all over the States. So in 1990, they didn't see that. When they started rolling that in 1990 and 2000, they didn't see a Raspberry Pi and an SDR stick would overtake the ground-based way of doing things. And that's what I suppose that's why I get so ranty about it. Is like, come on, let's stop the clock. Let's get on to some modern ways of thinking. And there are some fantastic drone developers and stuff out there that will really push technology now, and we don't need to do it this way. It's great. Let the airplanes do it. That's super. The airplanes can do it. That's great. That's super. Fantastic. We can see them. We can see the airplanes. Fantastic.
For instance, I see a project like Ardo Pilots. Sorry, I'm pulling the.
That's fine.
I see a project like Ardo Pilots spearheading an effort on a system like this, but the problem is that then you get the big sharks in the industry, like the three-letter company from Shenzhen, having their own system and trying to pull their own system because they have commercial interests and they have money to lobby and all that. So we, as an open source pilot, could pick up and develop standards that would be recognized as good, cheap, because it has to be cheap, and that would work. But then the big guys will come up and will try to take over. That's the problem.
Well, and as James has alluded to, that's kind of the problem with the DAC. That's the kind of what that's about. And so grown-up airplanes, they can have ADSB. That's cool. We can see those. We can already bring those into Mission Planner. We can see and get out of the way of those. Gliders, light aircraft, ultralights. They could have something like Open Glider Network, or there's the other one, and that would, or FLARM even, and that would be equally cool. And that could get pulled in. I don't see this as a technology issue. I think this is something that can almost be solved in a weekend. A heavy weekend of drinking would get this problem solved.
That's so true.
No, it's all the technology is out there. It's all out there. It's all out there. It's all available. It's all open source. It can probably be improved. There's probably better ideas to be had and little nuanced stuff. But again, it just takes the right group of people in there. But none of these people are sat at the DAC. And I think Well, I think the FAA are already trying to pull away from the DAC. That's already happening. They're already regretting their choices.
Then you're mentioning another problem, that is, okay, what is the FAA going to do? What is CASA going to do? What is the Portuguese ANAC going to do? What is EASA going to do? So if they all go on different directions,
well, what we need, God, I'm on my high horse, aren't I?
Yes,
go,
go, Gary.
Well, but what we need, to my mind, what would be cool is just let's roll back to safety. So for the safety case for the actual airframe and aircraft itself is an open standard for reporting of engine temperatures, pressures, all the other good stuff that normally happens. But let's make that an open standard so anyone can compete and provide the logbook solution for that. And then let's have an open standard at the same time for how the aircraft will talk to a UTM. And I don't personally, I don't think the controllers won't be interested, but maybe we'll get to know. The aircraft will get cleverer before UTMs are. Here's my prediction: before UTMs roll out, the aircraft themselves will get cleverer and get out of the way and do it all themselves, and the UTM won't be needed. But anyway, let's have an open standard for that as well. At the moment, with the DAC and the others, they're rushing to create proprietary standards that are going to cost money for people to
license,
to be part of and license. And that's what is it. I think if you went to answer your sort of point, Louis, if you went to civil aviation authorities and said, as a group, this is our open standard, this is what it is, I think a lot of regulators would say, oh yeah, look, you've thought about that. Look, Craig, you've had a lot of interaction with the Civil Aviation Authority. I don't, in the UK, I don't think they're unreasonable. And I think if you came to them with a reasoned standard, they'd probably go, oh yeah, well, we'll have a go at that.
Yes, they would, and in some cases they wouldn't. So and I'll give you an example. The Association of Remotely Piloted Aircraft Systems in the UK, which is essentially the trade body for remote pilots in the UK, ARPAS UK, of which I was recently chairman, we proposed a series of piloting standards that we wished to propose to or submit to the CA, and actually we weren't essentially blanked, but they came back to us with a, thanks, it's well intentioned, but we're perfectly capable of compiling those standards ourselves without any input from industry. Now that's not always the case. Sometimes they do require input from industry, but I think they often feel that by accepting inputs from industry, there is a proprietary aspect. So to come back to Gary's comment about proprietary elements, I'm going to use the analogy of UTM. There are a number of UTM software options out there that are companies that are commercial entities, and they're looking to develop a product that they're hoping is going to be accepted across the the world effectively, and become the Google of the UTM space, to the exclusion of all other UTM options. And the problem with that is it's a model that doesn't really work on a global level, because the likes of ICAO and EASA they're not commercially geared organizations. What they want is a standard that can be applied, and a product that could be certified for operation in a harmonized way across Europe and the states that are developing different air traffic management systems, such as in Europe they are developing the CESAR joint understanding, and in the States they're developing next gen, which are having real issues integrating anyway. And you start to introduce different UTM, so AirMap and Unifly and Altitude Angel, all of those coming in. How do they plug into each other? How do they all integrate if they're proprietary systems, which are charging customers a registration fee in order to be part of it?
It can't be proprietary, because the state of Florida has already allowed commercial flight. The legislature has already given the okay for commercial delivery flights. So any UTM system that comes out is going to have to be open to all.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree.
probably is open according to a fee that you'll have to pay to use the system.
That's-
So welcome to
Yeah,
the not invented here syndrome. And
yeah,
But I think it is a very big risk, and I don't think the community is quite understanding. And also, I think the manned aviation, the light aircraft community, shall we say, private flyers, are not understanding, because these UTMs are going to affect them as well, because they're going to have to be playing it as part of it in some way or another. Um, and Louis, Bob on correct. I'll put the link in the bottom when we finish for the European thing, if you happen to be in Europe. But people have to have their say now, and have to be aware of what's going on in their name, I think.
yeah,
It's
there
a
are some
worry.
associations that are trying to collect, for instance, the Portuguese commercial drone association has been requesting their associates to fill up a form to add to compile all that. But on these situations, and for instance, at my company, we've had the visit of some European commissioners that are looking at the innovation and the regulation, what the regulation does to the innovation on these areas of drones. And he was very specific. You guys have to lobby and have to make your voice heard. And the way these guys hear things is going straight to them. And when these periods of consultation appear, we have to be open and respectful on the comments, not say you're such a bunch of whatever, insult us, but okay, let's look at it. Let's try to be reasonable on the comments. For instance, even the Portuguese legislation that is now open to discussion, which will mandate a mandatory registration of every drone and mandatory civil liability on every drone or model airplane. They're open to discussion, and I know that most of the feedback they're having is don't get a registration per model, get a registration per pilot, and make it not expensive, cheap, like the $5 just to cover processing costs. But we have to stop moaning and asking the Bruces, asking the Bruces to make our voice heard all over.
And at the end of the day, registration doesn't. It's happening in the comments, but it doesn't increase the safety, and that's Craig's story. It doesn't increase safety. It's
The Portuguese proposal even has something which is ridiculous, which will mandate all sellers. So you go to Best Buy or a media market like we have here, or a Fnac like we have here. You buy a drone, and they are obliged to register the purchaser. So it's just like you go to a car dealership and you have to fill up the registration forms. So the new legislation mandates the sellers to do it. If you already have a drone or you buy a second-hand drone, you have 10 days to do that process of ownership of the drone. So it's completely maddening, the new legislation. So let's go for the bigger umbrella, which is the European one, and try to get it changed. It's different.
Yeah, it's look, we've gone over the hour again by stumbling.
Sorry, Gary.
No, we've stumbled over the hour. An hour seems to have gone by. Yeah, and unfortunately, we end up talking about the same things every week, don't we? And the thing is that there isn't. So let's say the DAC, DAC is the Drone Advisory Council in America, and the people that are sitting there and are able to make the loudest noise are the people with the biggest wallet, and they're not necessarily looking out to, even though they say they are, and because they've got thousands of end users. One particular company already has a little place in its code for micropayments. It's already there. There's already
it's already phone, right?
It's already in the in sort of the spreadsheet is that's where that'll go, and they are on that DAC, and that is a worry. It's got to be a worry, and yeah, I'll say I've lost.
Even for insurance, we already have some apps in US that get insurance by the hour. So we'll have to get an app for the drone, to okay. Today I want to fly the drone. Let's pay $10 to fly the drone for 10 minutes.
That's exactly what's going to happen, and then they'll probably pull in that insurance as well. And you know, you can come all the way back around to saying the AMA is actually quite a cool thing. They should be allowed to have more say. They've got established, been going more than 75 years, I think. They've got established training programs. It is the old duffers in the field, and you might like it, but you know, they provide good training, and they're good people at heart. Again, I'm ranting.
They aren't around here because the airplane flyers and the helicopter flyers, they don't understand sense and avoid. When they're coming at your drone and your drone moves automatically, which you have no control over, they're yelling at you, why did you go that way? Well, I didn't. You came near it and it moved.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's a technology, and I suppose the other way of wrapping, sort of, to try and sort of underline tonight's rant on the same subject as ever, is that I think we're actually at a bit of a tipping point in the whole of aviation, be it manned, unmanned, whatever. We're at a technology tipping point where it's all got to change. Air traffic's got to change. Everything's got to change. At the end of the day, the airliners, they're climbing out. They you know, around the airport, they need their 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 feet, and they're away. And they're into the airway system. And we're not. We generally aren't playing there. If we're flying an RPA that flies in the airway system, then we'll have an ATPL and we'll be flying like an aeroplane. It'll be an aeroplane, like the big military systems.
Just wait for Mr. Elon Musk to come up with a flying Tesla. Then all problems will be gone.
But well, yeah. So I've lost my train of thought. And it's a good job too, because it was a rant. So it's a good job I've lost my train of thought. Anyway, what we normally do is say, does anyone else have anything else they'd like to say before we go? So let me throw the floor open. Has anyone else seen anything else?
Yes, I have.
Go ahead.
Can we talk about it?
No.
Rants.
Actually, it's just something I want on the subject of safety. I'm in the process of working on a video speaking to the subject of situational awareness, because that's probably the single largest factor involved in keeping drones and general aviation apart, is ensuring situational awareness from the point of view of drone operators. So I am doing my bit for safety. I'm doing an educational video demonstrating, explaining the concepts, educating the good practice involved in doing that, and hopefully not only people who fly recreational drones will watch it, but hopefully the regulators will watch it as well, because it will perhaps open their eyes to the fact that the regulations are not risk-based. And so if we can get a compromise, if we can get the regulators listening to the facts rather than the hysteria, maybe we can get a regulation that will mean that people will be inclined to comply with that regulation. It won't be excessively onerous. So watch out for that video, and I'd like some feedback from anyone that watches it too.
We'll do that. Would it involve an old man? Would it involve swans?
No.
Oh.
Giving ports to ports?
No. It's all it's a bit of whiteboard, a bit of GA, and a bit of stuff. So I've already filmed most of the bits and pieces, putting it together. I'm going to show people what it's like to be stuck in a 172 cockpit, and what a lack of situational awareness is really all about. Because I don't think regulators, none of them have really flown FPV with first-person view, and I don't think many model flyers have been stuck in the cockpit of a 172. And when you look at it, the situational awareness of your average private pilot in a Cessna 172 can be, not always, but can be dramatically lower than the situational awareness of someone flying a drone in close proximity in a quiet environment. And I'll explain the reasons why. I think everyone here probably already knows the reasons why, but I want the regulators to see that their regulations are based on third-party information, which is not always accurate, and therefore it's unreasonably restrictive in many cases. And if, as I say, it's a value exchange. If you're going to regulate someone, you have to have a pretty good regulation. You have to back it up with solid, sensible reasoning. At the moment, the regulators can't actually do that all the time. So when people look at those regulations, they go, this is a load of rubbish, because I've done this and I know that what the regulations are saying are stupid. And if you do that, if you don't have the respect of the people you're trying to regulate, it's very hard to get compliance. So I'm trying to go about it in a practical, pragmatic way and educate both sides of this equation, because neither is, they both need to be informed.
Are we at sort of a danger point though, if you have a 20-year-old, 30-year-old, 40-year-old, 50-year-old with, I put myself in the duffer end of stuff where I've made mistakes, and the mistakes I've made have been expensive because I've broken my model airplanes and I've had to, so that's where my education's come from. It's come from my wallet. And and how do you make the safety is very, very dull if you're 20 or 25 or 30. Maybe by the time you're 35 and you've got the kids.
Yeah.
So that isn't to make it not dull, Gary. You just have to make
it
not dull. And that's the art that I think people like Bruce has, is to get dull things exciting.
Yeah, I would say that safety is dull, and yet you can put layers over it which make it less dull. And there are different ways to sell safety to different age groups. So safety means different things to different people. And you use, I think it was, the phrase was used earlier on in the broadcast, but a sort of a carrot and stick approach. If you're a commercial operator, then I always promote the idea that it is very much a business continuity activity. If you're a consumer operator, then you have to look at it you have to appeal to their sense of social community responsibility, whilst at the same time presenting them with the implications that could happen if they do something irresponsible or illegal, which is prosecution, and further down that line. And that's where the education piece comes in. Bruce, I applaud your video. I'd love to see it, and also circulate it in the UK for exactly the same audience that you have in New Zealand, because essentially it's the same challenge, it's the same issues. And I completely know where you're coming from here. When I was an air traffic controller and I was going through my controller training, I didn't really understand the environment of my main customer, which was a pilot, until, as part of the course, they put me in a cockpit and they sent me around the radar pattern, and they showed me when an air traffic controller was making transmissions at certain points, what the workload was in the cockpit, what the pilot could see, what they were looking up at, what was happening in the air as the aircraft was turning, critical stages of flight. And I'm gibbering on in the background on the frequency. And then I started to really understand that, how to do my job properly. And the same applies in the, in the drone sector, is if you have a good understanding as a drone operator of how you impact on the general aviation community, particularly at low level, in a country like the United Kingdom, which is massively congested in terms of air traffic, then you have a much better understanding, a general understanding of safety. And there are lots of forums now where general aviators, so these are guys flying your Cessna 172s, PA-28s around the country in the UK, generally at low level, or helicopters that are doing practice force landings into clearings in the middle of nowhere. Those guys are now, they're actively engaging with commercial and consumer drone operators, just to basically get them in a room, shower them with beer, and then get them talking about similar things, because their worlds overlap. And when their worlds overlap, eventually they're going to come into contact with each other. And if they don't know about each other's worlds, then it's going to be a negative experience in some way.
Absolutely. One of the things I've got planned for this summer too, if I can get permission from our local council, is we're having a sort of a summer of aviation. My goal is to bring both camps together, get people who fly drones up in light aircraft so they can see just how dangerous it feels if they would hit a drone while they're up there, and get the GA people to fly, have a look through the goggles in drones, understand the limitations and the abilities of these craft, so that each group has a better empathy for the other, and that's how you get safety going. You know, if someone has never been up there in a 172 on approach to a small airfield and thought, oh my God, what happens if I hit a drone? And then they can't empathize with the pilot who faces that every time they fly. So we've got to get that together. This is something that I've taken off, you know, it's my own initiative. I'm going to try and get it going. Unfortunately, the bureaucracy works against me. They're not interested in it, but I think it's something you have to do for safety.
Absolutely.
Come on, Bruce. You'll have to change your angle to the bureaucracy. Instead of going this way, just start shifting a little.
Trust me, Lewis, I've tried all the angles, mate. The problem with bureaucracies is if they don't like you because you've criticized them, you're stuffed. You know, it's a personality thing with the like, oh, it's just too, I'm not going there. It's just, I've tried everything. So I'll just keep tapping away, though. I'm not going away.
It's an interesting modern problem, isn't it? And you know, you could be awfully blunt and say, well, actually, as droney types, we outnumber manned aviation quite dramatically now. They must get out of our sky. But
Gary,
you know,
we can outman the general aviation guys, but we have less representation on the entities than the normal aviation guys.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
I think that's largely because we're not coming together as a. There are no. Well, in the UK, there's ARPAS. There's a few. There are a few little islands of grown-up representation, but very few. The UK is actually quite lucky. It's got two. It's got Simon, what's his name, for the FPV community, and it's got ARPAS. Yeah, so they've got two. So the FPV community in England are clear up to 1,500 feet now, aren't they? I think, is that right, Craig? I think it's 1,500 feet, isn't it?
Yeah, they are, but it's in controlled environments, so it's very much like the radio control model. You know, the British Model Flying Association, who are, you know, they've got 37,000 members, but they're well established. They've got an excellent safety program. They've got good training. They've got good licensing involved, and they are in no way a concern. You know, the hobbyists are really good guys. And the FPV Association is a bolt-on of that, and they operate in a controlled manner. So that's less.
And they're not getting dragged into it quite as much as like in America, where the AMA, I think, were also going after a little bit of a land grab, and that backfired on them with 336. There are countries where the standard on model flyer is under threat, and as a drone community, we should not. We shouldn't be helping that. We shouldn't be threatening. We shouldn't be making their life harder.
I don't think. Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think across Europe, Lewis will probably chime in with this as well. Across Europe, the model flying associations are concerned with some aspects of the NPA because they're worried that they're going to be disenfranchised in some way. Yeah. Now, that I don't think that will be the case personally, because I think generally across Europe, certainly at EASA level, but at national level, the model flying associations are held in high regard, and I don't think there's any outward intention to change the approach. I think that they just feel that, you know, these drone guys are suddenly pitched up. They're the new guys on the block. We've been around for 30 or 40 years and we've got established safety programs. These guys have rocked up, and you know, they're trying to take over the world, and we're suddenly going to be pushed aside. I don't think that's going to be the case at all.
Well, the big problem we've had is that the aviators or the regulators have not actively differentiated between the people who are the problem, the drone operators, you know, that they just bought myself a new Phantom, going to fly it at the airfield people, and the traditional hobby that has had this wonderful track record of safety. There's been no credit handed out to those organisations, the traditional hobbyists. We're all being treated like we're evil drone flies. And until the regulators wake up and realise two separate groups, you need two different approaches, and stop basically penalising the safe people for the actions of the unsafe people, because it generates resentment and a lack of compliance. They don't understand psychology. Human factors, you know, one thing, but psychology of the groups you're trying to control is another big thing. There's a complete lack of understanding of the psychology of these two different groups. And without understanding how these people, their mindsets, how they react, you can't control them. You're trying to nail jelly to a tree. And that's why I think we've had such low levels of compliance in terms of the, people flying drones at airports, because they're not addressing them. As I say, there's no value exchange. They're getting nothing, and there's very little engagement. We've got the three-letter acronym companies working with the regulators to create all these rules to regulate a completely separate group. What's wrong with engaging with the group you want to regulate? This is
But
just not
don't
happening.
forget, Bruce, that you cannot regulate stupid. You're going to have these idiots who do these things like that 21-year-old in Tel Aviv. You can't regulate idiots who just don't care. But for the rest of us who do and are following the policies, we have to pay the price.
Yeah, and
there's no vaccine for
right.
stupid.
What I've heard about what's happening in America is there are some people with some very, very deep pockets that are very, very keen to make sure that AMA type flying and by extension all private drone flying, so you can put the two together, should only happen at approved AMA fields, and that is to clear up airspace. And there's some big money going in front of the FAA, and that's the point they're making. That's what they want to happen. They want.
That's insanity.
Well, that's what people are telling me has happened, and I can have the tin hat like Bruce has earlier. We were proved right with the government memo, and there's other things we've been proved right with, but people don't listen. That's what I'm being told is happening in Washington right now. Is big money is saying they can fly their model airplanes, they can fly their private drones, but it can only happen in sort of sanitized areas, and that's it. And no, it's not the AMA that has that power, Robert. It's the AMA, Robert Elliott on the comments. The AMA is being thrown under the bus. I believe they say that. Yeah, anyway, I just wanted to. We've gone to an hour and a half. I wanted to try and neatly have a rant and finish it half past, but I failed in that regard.
Okay, so, I'm muting now.
Guys, anyone else have anything else before we go? And then we must go because everyone's got lives, except Bruce and me, of course, and the Swans. But that's another story altogether. So, gentlemen, thank you very, very much for joining this afternoon or morning if you're in New Zealand, and everyone on the live chat, thank you very much for joining in. It's been great having your input. If you've liked this, do all those internety things, all those YouTubey things, thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever, I don't really care, and subscribe if you haven't, and we'll see you again at 2100 GMT next week when we'll try and rant on a different subject, but I doubt it very much. Thanks very much. And Craig, can we look for what's the next episode of your or the next?
It's well, Article 2 is of operational safety cases for drones. Is about understanding safety. So it's looking at the safety culture that currently exists in your organization to understand what the baseline is, so you know how to improve on it to get a safety case application successfully through the powers that be.
Hooray! So we'll post that on SUS News very soon, I hope, and hopefully we can talk about that next week. Thursday morning. Thursday morning, beautiful. That'll be up on Thursday morning. Yeah. Gentlemen, thank you very much. I'll see you next week. Cheers, guys. Bye. Great. Thanks, everyone. Bye. Bye.